In the history of ARK, there has never been a better way to cap your dedicated storages in such a short time. In this video, I will show you several farming methods that are so good they feel like cheating. If you farm metal on a map other than the center, then from now on, you will always have less metal than everyone else. With the center, there is only one valid strategy to farm metal. On the center, there is a part of the ocean that is very deep, and if you swim normally, it is impossible to get there. But if you have a dunklo, you can easily get down there. In this region spawn massive amounts of metal rocks. These rocks only spawn at the bottom of the ocean on the center. In this area you're 100% safe, as there are no wild dinosaurs there. With this method, you can also farm tons of stone at the same time and fill your stores in no time at all. If you need more metal, then just throw the stones away, and if you want to keep the stones, then throw the metal away. Don't worry, there is so much metal that you won't even notice it. These rocks spawn in clusters, which means there are always 5 to 15 rocks spawning in a small area, and sometimes even 2 to 3 rocks spawning inside each other. The majority of the spawns consist of large metal rocks, which means that on single player settings, they already give around 500 metal per rock. These clusters spawn over the entire length of the marked area. In some areas, pearls, crystal and oil rocks also spawn, so it makes sense to have an angler on follow and to pack the pearls in from time to time. I have never managed to farm all the rocks without getting back to surface several times and packing the metal into crates, as even a max level dunklo is overloaded in no time at all. It's really scary how easy it is to farm large amounts of important resources on the center. There are so many metal rocks in this area that by the time you reach the end, the first ones at the beginning have already respawned. The way to the spot is really long, so it must pay off that you take the way, and it makes sense to take several scuba tanks because it's virtually impossible to get down again once you have run out of air. It is best to place a raft over the spot and bring your metal into the raft in the meantime, as rafts are not restricted by weight. If you are already further advanced, you should definitively build a small base with beds, transmitters and dedicated storages at this point to keep the distance between the base and the metal spot as short as possible. You can also have several players who fill several dunklo and swim to the raft to farm as many resources as possible. There are two ways to farm obsidian efficiently. If you already have a dunklo, you can simply go back into the depths of the ocean and farm obsidian there. However, if you're not quite ready yet and need smaller quantities, you should grab a PT and fly to the skull. Obsidian rocks spawn in and around it, which you can easily farm with a pickaxe or an anki. Everyone who plays PvP needs wood, so basically charcoal. It has never been easier to farm charcoal than on the center. The center offers a huge redwood forest with trees that you can farm. The redwood trees produce significantly more wood than regular trees, so it makes sense to either use a chainsaw and farm directly into a dino that has a lot of weight, or you can also farm with a beaver or a mammoth, as these farm a lot of wood and significantly reduce the weight of wood. There are countless redwood trees on the easternmost part of the island. It is best to build a small base in this area. It shouldn't be anything elaborate, as it is likely to be destroyed regularly. It is best to look for a spot where a drop comes down and build your base so that the drop lands in your base. In the redwood on the center, there are a lot of drops that can be used for traveling. This makes it easier to farm wood. Don't worry about your base, you essentially only need the base to place your crates and so that you have a safe place to upload the wood. I don't think I need to explain how to farm wood efficiently. Just grab your beaver, a mammoth or a chainsaw and fill your crate as full as you can. Then wait for a drop to land in your base. You can speed up the drop spawn by flying off drops and emptying landed drops so that they disappear. When the drop has landed, throw all the wood you have farmed on the ground and pick it all up at once. When you are slot capped, use the beacon to travel to another map. Either spawn that directly in your base and throw the wood into the forges, or if you build on the center, spawn directly at an obelisk in a hut you have prepared and travel directly back to the center. Currently, there is no better map to farm element than the center. Bosses drop more element on the center than on any other map. It is now much more difficult to farm the artifacts and trophies, and the bosses are slightly easier overall. But you have to fight 2 bosses at the same time. This means you unlock tech engrams faster. The best way to do the bosses on the center is to breed Spinos. There are currently no easier dinos that are worth taking into the boss arena. On the one hand, Spinos can tank a lot, especially if you equip them with good saddles. And on the other hand, there are only a few dinos that do comparable damage. You can use Spinos because half of the arena is essentially water. In the water, Spinos get the Neptune's Blessing buff, with which they do more damage. In addition, more Spinos than Rexes spawn on the center in some regions, which makes it a little easier to find and breed good Spinos. However, if you have already found and bred good Rexes, this is not a problem. Rexes or Tertsis are just as good and can do the job just as well. They are just a little slower at killing the bosses in the arena. You can easily get Poly at the green obelisk. The ice on which the penguins lived in ASE is still there. Best way to farm the Poly is with a club, a chainsaw, a bear or Pelagornis. These get the largest amount of Poly per penguin, and don't forget, the younger the penguins, the more Poly they give. There are no more penguins in the ice castle, but a few spawn on the surface near the southern iceberg and on the southern side in the cliffside cavern. This means that overall there is significantly less Poly on the center than on any other map. It is therefore important that you farm the penguins from time to time, so that you always have enough Poly in your base. This is also one of the biggest problems on the center. If a tribe decides to fortify the ice so that you can no longer farm, then you have suffered, because there is no other good way to get large quantities quickly without farming large amounts of cementing paste and obsidian. In order to farm large amounts of Poly, you will have to travel to other maps to farm there. If you play PvP, you need Rhino Horns for various things. With the center, it is now very easy to get Rhino Horns in early game. A few rhinos always spawn at the green obelisk and can be farmed very easy. If you need Mantis, you can also use Rhino Horns. If you play PvP, you need honey and sap. You can find bees in the southern part of the map, in the redwood. With a little practice, you can easily get them by shooting the hives, use C4 or with a PT C-spin, and then feeding the queen with simple kibble. Once you have the queen, you simply place a hive in your base and you got yourself some honey. Don't forget the rare flowers and the wall around the hive. Otherwise you will take damage and the hive will disappear. You can also farm sap in the redwood. Simply attach a tap to the trees and you will have enough sap for your cakes in no time. You can farm rare flowers on the center in the swamp. Here you can either get rare flowers from plant species AX from time to time, or if you farm the flowers that are close to the water. It's best to use either your hands, a whip or a dino that can deal with the swamp, such as a stego or a trike. You can also always get good amounts of rare flowers from beaver dams. In the redwood, you can easily get thousands of hide by killing dinos and then farming them with a chainsaw. In ASA, there was a change that engrams from other maps can also be used on the center without having to travel to them. This means that anyone can now use the chainsaw. Of course, you can always lick Meganura with a frog. This is not necessarily fun and is not very effective on the center, but it always works. Since there are no good Meganura spawns on the center, unlike on the island, this means that you can farm a little cement for a short time by eating Meganura, but you won't get very much out of it. If you're playing on a cluster, the easier strategy is still to get a frog or a Megatherium and go to the swamp cave on the island. If you're not playing on a cluster, it is better to farm the caves on the center with a Megatherium than to lick Meganuras. The center has a lot of caves like the center cave or the entrance to the underworld, where tons of spiders and other bugs spawn. With a Megatherium, you can clear these caves with ease and take large amounts of chitin with you. Compared to the other maps, the center is currently the map where it makes the most sense to farm cement in beaver dams. On single player settings, there's an average of 150 cement in a beaver dam, and in the new redwood on the center there are several rivers and lakes in which large quantities of dams spawn and can be farmed. As a rule, 3 to 5 dams spawn per river, and with a bit of luck and the right settings can yield significantly more than 150 cement per dam. I've marked the areas with the largest spawns on the map so that you can find the cement you need as easy as possible. In addition, there are always a few pearls in the dams that are best not thrown away, as you can always use them. The only important thing is that you always destroy the dams at the end, so that new ones can spawn. If no dams spawn, you can try to fly out and back into the render area, which kinda motivates the beavers to spawn new dams. Just like on the island, the Gamma Broodmother is one of the best bosses to farm element on the center. This means you can tame high level Megatherium and then use them to kill the bosses. On the island, 2 high level Megatheria were enough, but this won't work so easily on the center, as the monkey always spawns with the Broodmother, which makes the fight a little more difficult overall. But that shouldn't be a big problem. When you spawn in the arena, you can take a few more tames such as Rexes, Spinos with you in addition to the Megatheria. Position yourself at the far end of the arena so that you don't get any aggro from the bosses. Now destroy the monkey and defeat it with your Rexes or Spinos. If you're fighting this far back, Rexes are a little better as Spinos don't get the buff in this area. Make sure you don't pull the Broodmother during this time. Once you've killed the monkey, head for the Broodmother. Grab your Megatheria and let the other dinos tank. Position yourself behind the Broodmother and farm the spiders that spawn behind her. Just before the timer runs out, simply kill the Broodmother and you will spawn with loads of chitin at your upload. Those who don't fill their turrets will suffer. That's why you need unbelievable amounts of flint. If you only play on the center, the best flint farmer for you is the Anki. If you're playing on a cluster and you can travel on Scorched Earth, then you will need a Phasolosuchus or a Mantis. Overall, the Phaso is the best flint farmer, but it is a bit harder to tame than a Mantis. And if you give your Mantis good tools, it will also do its job. But for the best deal, you really need a Phaso. The Redwood is one of the best places to farm flint. There are not as many stone clusters as on the island or Scorched Earth, but you can farm large quantities in a very short time compared to the rest of the map, especially in and around the rivers. In the Redwood Cave, you can also find decent amounts of crystal and metal. There are several ways to farm Silicia Pearls on the center. If you farm all the spot one after the other, you can farm thousands of pearls in a very short time. The best place on land is the Pearl Cave, which has a quite fitting name because there are pearls all over the place. All you have to do is pick them up. It's best to use a whip to get through the bushes on the ground. If you're already on the lava island, then you must take the small pawns on the island with you for maximum yield. These pawns are all over the lava island, and there are no dinosaurs in them apart from a few piranhas that can spawn in some pawns, but not all of them. There's a large lake under the center island, which is relatively dangerous, but there are a lot of pearls in it, and with a good angler, you can fill up your storages up to the cap in no time. On the center, there are also pearls in the rivers on the middle island, and you can find a lot of pearls in almost all riverbeds. So that you can finally craft your tech turrets, you need black pearls. Black pearls are probably the rarest resource in ARK, and getting black pearls on the center is also a bit tricky. The easiest option is to swim to the bottom of the sea with a megalodon and kill trilobites and Euripides. Megalodons have an increased chance of farming black pearls. However, if you need large quantities of black pearls, you need to farm Alpha Mosas, Alpha Tusus and regular Tusus. Alpha Mosas spawn at about 3/3 of the depth of the deep sea. Alpha Tusus spawn a little higher, at about the half of the depth of the deep sea. So you have to swim all the way down with your Megalodon, and then swim down the dark stripe at the eastern end of the map. If you're using Pases, they do additional damage to Tusus. Regular Tusus drop 23, Alpha Tusus drop 75, and Alpha Mosas drop 100 black pearls. Tusus also drop absorbent substrate, so you don't need to use your black pearls for this. It is best to orientate yourself along the 90 coordinate line and swim up and down it. Regular Tusus in particularly regularly spawn along this line. If you leave and re-enter the render area, you may trigger the spawn of new creatures. If you have a strong Mosa, you can farm all the black pearls you need along the line in no time at all. I hope this video has helped you find and farm the resources you need. Hit the like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm, and consider subbing to the channel. Alright, Frodo.